Hey everyone, we are back after a long break from any videos, new tutorials, or new patterns, and today I just wanted to show you the process of digitizing a new pattern. About 2 years ago, one of the first interchangeable mix and match patterns was a whale or a narwhal pattern, and I think it just lacked a little bit of development because it was never a very popular pattern. I think it was probably too narrow in some places, so I decided to take another stab at a fish whale type pattern. And this shape is definitely more of a wrap wing than the previous pattern, and I'll go ahead and show you the pattern. This is roughly what one of the first iterations looked like of the whale pattern. It was pretty narrow in the back and didn't have a lot of wing coverage. So my goal with the new pattern was to make this more of a center bleeder friendly pattern. So if you need center coverage, if you need just more wing space to catch any, overflow, this pattern should be better for that. And I think the proportions are also a little more visually appealing than the previous pattern. So this video isn't necessarily meant to be a tutorial on how to digitize patterns, but I'll just roughly talk about what I'm doing here. At the beginning of the video, I was scaling the picture to be the correct dimensions in Illustrator, and then I traced the outline of the shape, which will be the sewing line. And now I'm trying to find a good shape for the core, making sure that the core isn't too wide in the pad and that it will follow the shape of the sewing line nicely, so it'll look good if you have the stitching visible on the topper. I usually sew my pads so that the core stitching is hidden on a suspended layer or a hidden layer of muslin, but I know many people skip that step and leave their stitching lines on the topper. So usually I spend some time making sure the core shape will look nice on the topper. So I skip a few steps at the end of this, but I ended up creating two different core shapes. One is a little narrower than the other, depending on how much coverage you'd like to have in your pad. And skipping ahead, this is the final pattern with two different lengths. They have about 9.5 inches of coverage, like in the core, and the longer pad has about 11.5, but from tip to tip it's about 9.75 and 11.75. Just briefly, I'm going to show you my process sewing this pattern because I wanted to test it and make sure that it came out well and that everything was snapping together like it should. On the right here, my layers are, for the core, I have 500 GSM bamboo terry, and I have a hidden layer of muslin that I drew my sewing line onto with permanent marker, and then the topper is cotton velour and the backer is Power Stretch 9411. Here I've just put my core on top of the hidden layer and I'm going to sew them together with a straight stitch. I will backstitch at the beginning and end of sewing this onto the muslin layer. After the core is attached to the hidden layer of muslin, I then lay all the layers together so that I can pin them. The topper and the backing fabric need to be right sides together so that when they're turned out, you will see fuzzy on the front and the back. After I get enough pins in this to feel comfortable that the layers aren't going to shift, then I sew with my needle positioned directly on the sewing line from start to finish, and I leave a hole big enough to turn the pad through. Then I'll use my pinking shears to trim the seam allowance off of the pad, but I leave a flap at the turning hole that has more seam allowance there so that when I top stitch it will catch those layers and sew the pad shut. And here's what the pad looks like when the wings are folded over. It's got a lot of coverage in the wings, but when it's snapped, it will be a pretty straight pad. And this is what the pad looks like compared to the previous version, which was more of a tab wing style. Thank you for watching this video. I hope that it was helpful to you, or at the very least entertaining. I will talk to you guys again soon. Bye!